Hey guys, Casey Scanlon here. Going to give you a quick fishing report for Lake of the Ozarks. It's Friday, March 4th. The water level is 654.2. So it's come up a little bit since last week, and the water temps have come up as well. We've had some really nice weather, so the lake's warming up nicely. It was, roughly 39 to 40 degrees all over the lake last week, and now these water temps are creeping up into the low 40s. And probably, getting close to 50 degrees in some of these shallower areas throughout the lake. So the fishing should start picking up a lot. Last week we had a big event up here at Lake of the Ozarks. We had the Toyota Series, which I actually fished in. Didn't have a great event, actually. Was really anticipating having a good showing here at my home lake. But man, the fish were moving around a lot with the warm weather we had. Had an awesome few days of practice leading up to that event. So I'll give you kind of a rundown of how that event shook out, and how the next couple of weeks are going to go down in my opinion. So the bite's going to really change every day now that we're starting to get these warmer days. So I'll tell you what's been working for me the past week or so, and what I think is about to happen here at the lake. So, of course, we've had our traditional jerkbait, A-rig, jig bite going on the past week, and that bite's going to remain pretty strong here going into the next few weeks as the water starts warming up. So right now, all three of those baits are players. They've been players this past week. The Toyota Series was one on Alabama rig and a jerk bait, and a lot of the top finishers were all throwing the Alabama rig and jerk bait combination. Looking at their live scope a lot. Live scope's been a real big key to finding a lot of these fish, whether you're fishing for bass or you're fishing for crappie. Seeing those fish out on your screen when they're suspended in this open water, and as much as the fish have been moving, it's been key to kind of keep up with them as they're on the move. So a lot of the guys, including myself, we're trying to find these fish either suspended or on the bottom and get them to react to that jerk bait or Alabama rig. I figured the Toyota Series event would be one on the Alabama rig, so I dedicated quite a bit of my time to throwing it. It's not a bait that I like to throw, or one that I throw very often. But this time of year, it's a deadly technique. And leading up to the event, I put in a little bit of practice, trying to gain some confidence in the Alabama rig. And it produces some really big fish, but it's hard to get them to commit to the bait right now. And that might start picking up here in the next few days here as the weather gets warmer, the fish start getting more active. They might be more inclined to actually commit to that bait. Had a lot of followers in the event. I know a lot of the other competitors had a lot of these fish, follow the bait, strike at it, not commit to that. So, change the bait up, change your retrieves up. Change your A-rig up and see if, some slight differences, some slight variations could get you a few more bites. As far as the jerk bait goes, we're fishing, both the A-rig and the jerk bait on fish that are suspended around creek channels, points, brush piles, relating to shad. The great part about live scope is you can kind of find these fish even out in that open water. And there's a lot of fish, especially the crappie, using that open water right now. And you really just pan around with your trolling motor and your graph and try to find those fish and then present that bait to them, whether it's the jerk bait, Alabama rig, or even a crappie jig if you're going for the crappies. But jerk bait was a big player last week through the Tackle HD. Fiddlesticks jerk bait, real natural colors were working. I've got a couple pulled out here right now. This Pro Blue, this is the Magnum one. I was throwing the more traditional size. I couldn't get them to commit to the Magnum as well this week, but that Pro Blue was a real good color this week with that clear water. Now we're starting to get some rain, and we're scheduled to get some rain this weekend. So that water is, probably going to get some more color to it, definitely throughout the spring. So, look at your, when that water gets a little bit color to it, look to, use a little bit different colored jerkbait, something a little bit more with a brighter hue to it. The white colors work really well. I got a bunch of them behind me right here. I'll grab a few. This Table Rock Shad's a really good one, no matter what the clarity. So that was actually a color I threw a lot last week in the tournament. So look to throw that in the same spots that we were talking about last week. You know, those points, those channel swings, you know, deep water, close to flats and coves where they're going to spawn at are real keys this time of year. Now, the main lake bite's going to start picking up. There's going to be a lot of fish kind of moving out of that, the main river channel and trying to move into some of these coves and look around to spawn. So check out a lot of those main lake banks as well in the next, you know, coming days and coming weeks. Those places should start to produce some more fish. The creek arms are going to start warming up here. You know, all that shallow water areas in the lake, you know, whether it's up a creek or in the back of one of these big coves, or way up the river, those shallow areas, when we get these 70-degree days and bright sunshine like we've been getting the last few days, those areas just tend to warm up quicker. So you're going to have some fish moving up in those shallow water areas that may not have been biting these last few weeks. So look for that to be happening as well. Those fish are going to, you know, be biting crankbaits, spinner baits, jerk bait, a jig, you name it. Anything that'll cover some water up shallow is going to produce those bites for you. So look for that to be a real player. You know, that jig bite, I caught a few fish on a jig every day, kind of saved me in the tournament a little bit. I dedicated so much time to trying to win the event and getting out there and throwing that A-rig, and didn't have a whole lot of success for it. So I found some areas that these fish were just moving up into, and I feel like, you know, that's going to happen all over the lake. The whole lake's going to start really producing here in the next week, and there's going to be some areas that, you know, may have not been so hot that are going to start really, you know, producing some good fish here in the next few days. But that little jig right there, you know, it's just my Trophy Bass Company head. I just tied a little finesse skirt on there for this event because bites were tough to come by. So put a little craw on the end of that, work it shallow around rocks, and that should produce a lot of bites for you throughout the spring. These fish are going to start trying to push their way up shallow, and anything that's going to, you know, like a jig where you can cover that 0 foot all the way out to 20 foot with that same lure is going to be really productive all the way up until they spawn. You know, these fish are going to start sliding up under these boat docks and behind the cables and things like that. And when they do that, the jig is a great way to catch those fish. So I'm going to be throwing the Trophy Bass Company Pro Finesse jig, you know, whether it's a 5/16 for shallow fishing or 7/16 fishing out deep. I'm going to, you know, use that finesse profile kind of in the clear water situations. And right now, when the water's real cold and we're getting a lot of fishing pressure, you know, that finesse jig just seems to get a few more bites. Now, as the water starts heating up, we're going to start throwing the Trophy Bass Company Pro jig. You know, it's got a full skirt on there, a little bit bigger profile, and it really skips under those cables really, really good. So when we get some dirty water, as the water starts heating up a little bit, or if you're going for a really big bite, a lot of times that bigger profile jig will get it done for you. So I'm going to fish those around wood cover, those same channel banks. You know, shallow gravel banks back in the pockets are going to hold a lot of fish, but any kind of visible cover behind the boat docks, you know, they'll be using the actual docks themselves, and any kind of brush situated around them. Laydowns are a great target. You know, any kind of visible cover is going to be productive with that jig. Crankbait bite's going to start going on here as well. For the crankbait, man, the Tackle HD crankbait right here has been producing a lot of fish for me. The crankhead is going to it's going to dive anywhere from, you know, 8 to 12 foot. It's going to get down there on the bottom, get on those channel banks, windy points, you know, really anywhere the wind's blowing, and try to make bottom contact with that bait. Reel it slow. You know, as the water temp heats up, you're going to want to speed the retrieve up a little bit, and that's the same as the jerk bait or Alabama rig. As these fish get more active, you're going to be able to impart more action in your baits, move them along a little bit faster, and cover a lot more ground. And that's going to help you, you know, put some more fish in the boat. So every day that passes, these fish are going to get more and more active. And, you know, you're going to start catching them on the spinner bait. That's going to start producing big time here in the next couple weeks. The Trophy Bass Company Ozark Flash is a great producer here, whether it's clear or stained, I'm going to reach for that white or maybe a white and chartreuse, 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce here in the springtime. Get that bait down there, bump some cover with it, and you're going to get some really, really big strikes. You know, if we get some of this rain that we're talking about, that spinnerbait bite is going to get jump started really, really quick. So look in the next few days for that to be going on. The spinnerbait bite is going to get really hot here at Lake of the Ozarks. It's one of my favorite places in the country to throw it, and it always produces a lot of big fish for me. So be sure to try the Ozark flash out. And if we get a little bit of you know, a little bit of that rain we're talking about and the lake really muddies up, you might go to something, you know, more with some Colorado blades, something with a little bit more thump, and that's going to produce a little bit more vibration, start catching some fish for you as well. Chatterbaits, square bills like the Tackle HD square bill is going to produce really good here in the next few weeks. Crawdad patterns, shad patterns, you know, if it gets real muddy, I'll start throwing some chartreuse at them. But keep it kind of natural right now. There's a lot of big gizzard shad that are starting to move up shallow, which tells me those big fish are going to be right behind them. And the spinnerbait, square bill, swim bait, any kind of shad imitating bait is going to be really key for those fish. You know, so if you see the shad, slow down and fish for them. Last week, we didn't get to talk about the crappie a lot. I kind of skipped out on those, and the crappie are biting. They have been biting, and it's been really good. So it's actually been cutting a little bit into my bass fishing. It's hard to go out there and see 100 of them on the live scope and not fish for them a little bit. But believe it or not, the jerk bait has been my best bait for catching big crappie. We've been catching a lot of 13 to 15 inch crappie on the Tackle HD Fiddlesticks jerk bait. It seems like the color pattern kind of changes day in and day out. You know, one day they seem to prefer one color, and the next day they seem to prefer another. But in general, they'll bite, you know, anything that looks pretty natural. They like a lot of chartreuse in the bait right now. Our clown color was really productive on them last week. So, you know, kind of keep switching the baits up a little bit and find out which one they bite. But in general, you'll get some bites on all of them. But if you experiment a little bit, you'll find that one will definitely outproduce another on a given day. So experiment a little bit with the color of jerk baits when you're targeting those crappie. But in general, they're, for me, suspended up, you know, in the middle of these creeks, around secondary points. You know, those fish are real high in the water column. They're close to the surface. I'm seeing them on my Panoptics, and they're in very big schools, and they're moving around a lot. So slip bobber has been really productive. Anywhere that the wind's blowing into seems pretty productive. So whether that's a secondary point or a creek or a pocket, you know, kind of chase that wind around. It seems like it blows the crappies in there, or maybe the bait that they're feeding on. But really just search around a lot. There's been some, you know, this lake has a ton of boat docks, and of course those are a staple for catching crappie. Anything that's got some brush around it is going to hold a few fish. But in general, for me, the fish have been kind of getting away from those boat docks, you know, sitting out in front of them and getting on, you know, the rockier banks, kind of a little bit shallower. And, you know, the slip bobber, when you see them, you know, on the graph, and you've caught a few on the jerk bait or whatever, I've been able to take a 1/16 ounce jig and, you know, a little crappie jig and throw it out there through them and let it sink, you know, to the depth that they're sitting at, which is usually anywhere from 4 to 8 foot in the last week or so. Now you can catch them extremely deep as well. But that 4 to 8 foot seems to be where a lot of those big groups are. So look for the crappie, and when you find some crappie, it seems like the bass are using a lot of the same areas as well. So that's kind of a good indicator that you're in an area that's got some activity, and to slow the boat down and do a little fishing. If you see those crappie or see the bass around, you know, settle down in that area, and you usually find a little more of what you're looking for. But those four baits, I'm sorry, Alabama rig, crankbait, jig, jerkbait, all really productive right now. Spinnerbait bite, I haven't had a chance to go out there and experiment with that yet, but it's going to be red hot here in the next couple weeks. if you're asking me. I think that's probably the next thing that's going to start going. That and the crankbait are going to really pick up. That jig bite, as those fish move shallower, like I said, is going to stay really, really consistent for you. And then, you know, we're going to start picking up some of these soft plastics we got hanging on the pegboard behind me coming in the next few weeks as well. You know, as these fish slide up shallower, don't forget to use, you know, a shallower running crankbait, whatever that may be. This Tackle HD square bill behind me has been a good one. This is a great little color here for the spring, if you can see that. Just anything with a little bit of red in it is really, really key this time of year. So fish are on the move right now. You know, they were on the move last week for me in that Toyota series, had a fabulous practice. We caught a ton of them on a jerkbait and a jig leading up to the event. And overnight, you know, with those 70-degree temps, a lot of those fish vanished. So look for, and you know, the areas that I was fishing, the water had been warm. You know, it's been a little bit warmer than areas. So those fish were a little bit ahead of the schedule, I'd say, and they left a little faster. So look for some of these colder water areas to be a little bit more behind, and look for that, you know, jig, jerkbait, you know, Alabama rig to be really, really productive, even the next couple weeks. And then, you know, some of these other areas and creek and river arms that had maybe been a little bit warmer the last few weeks, you know, those fish are a little bit ahead of schedule. So they're going to start doing some different things a little bit faster. So you got to kind of keep up with these fish this time of year. Do a lot of looking on your trolling motor, you know, just covering water with various baits, and a lot of looking with your electronics. You know, if you have live scope, utilize that, look around, try to get around the fish, and then slow down and try to catch them. Because in general, they've been a little stingy since this weather started heating up a little bit, but I expect things to change big time here in the next few days. So I hope this report helped you out. Hope you guys can go out there and catch a few fish in the next few weeks. If you're interested in a guide trip, I'm headed out to Florida for our next Pro Tour event. And I'll be back here in a week or so, and we have a ton of open dates throughout the spring. Be doing a lot of guiding here at the lake. So if you're interested in a trip, I'll drop a link in the comments section, and you guys can go ahead and hit me up if you're interested in that. But good luck to you this week if you're going fishing at Lake of the Ozarks. Hope you guys catch a lot of big fish, and we'll see you next week.